My name is Lisa Moreau, a 29-year-old marketing executive in Paris, where the city's charm masks the cutthroat world of my industry. I've always been driven, the kind of person who thrives on late nights crafting pitches and early mornings chasing big clients. 3 years ago, I married Victor Dubois, a man whose charm once swept me off my feet at a wedding in a quaint chateau outside Paris. But lately, that charm has faded, replaced by something colder, something that makes my stomach twist. I never imagined I'd be the woman questioning her husband's intentions, yet here I am, sitting at a brunch table, staring at a cup of coffee that smells like betrayal. The brunch is at Clara's apartment in Marais, a chic corner of Paris where cobblestone streets meet high-end boutiques. Clara, my sister-in-law, hosts these monthly family gatherings with the precision of a stage director. Table is a spread of croissants, fresh jams, and delicate porcelain, but the air feels heavy, like a storm brewing beneath the surface. Victor slides a steaming cup of coffee toward me, his smile tight, not reaching his eyes. "Try this, darling," he says, his voice smooth but oddly forced. "I made it just for you." Cup sits innocently before me, but the sharp, metallic tang wafting from it hits me like a warning bell. My skin prickles. 29, I've learned to trust my instincts, honed by years of navigating boardrooms and family dynamics. This smell isn't right. I force a smile, my fingers brushing the cup's handle, but I don't drink. Instead, I study Victor's face, searching for the man who once promised to stand by me forever. That day at our wedding, under the chateau's twinkling lights, he'd held my hand and sworn to be my rock. Now, his eyes mirror Clara's, cold, calculating, like they're sharing a secret I'm not meant to know. For weeks, Victor's been spending more time at Clara's, claiming they're planning a surprise for our upcoming anniversary. But the hushed conversations that stop when I enter the room, the cryptic texts I glimpsed on his phone last week, they've planted seeds of doubt. This coffee, with its strange chemical scent, feels like the final piece of a puzzle I've been too afraid to solve. Clara watches me from across the table, her manicured fingers lazily stirring her own coffee, her lips curled in a half-smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Victor's become quite the barista," she says, her voice dripping with something I can't quite place, mockery, maybe, or anticipation. My mind races back to last month, when I ended up in urgent care after drinking tea at her place. The doctors couldn't explain my symptoms, nausea, dizziness, a pounding headache, but Clara had insisted her tea was just like mine. I'd brushed it off then, chalking it up to bad luck. But now, with this acrid coffee under my nose, those incidents, stomach pains after a Christmas party, and allergic reaction after a family breakfast, form a pattern I can't ignore. My heart thuds, but I keep my face neutral, years of pitching to tough clients teaching me to hide my nerves. I lift the cup, pretending to savor the aroma, but all I can think is, what's in this? The metallic smell claws at my senses, a silent alarm screaming that something's wrong. Victor and Clara exchange a fleeting glance, and that's when I know I'm not paranoid. This isn't just coffee. It's a test, and I'm not about to fail it. If you're listening, thank you for joining me. Where are you today? Share in the comments and let's walk through this together. Clara's eyes bore into me from across the polished dining table in her Marais apartment, her spoon clinking softly as she stirred her coffee. The way she watched me, with that sharp, predatory gaze, felt like she was waiting for the curtain to rise on some twisted play. "Victor's quite the barista now, isn't he?" she said, her voice laced with a smugness that made my skin crawl. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication, as if daring me to take a sip from the cup Victor had placed before me. I lifted it to my lips, letting the metallic scent sting my nose, but I didn't drink. The memory of last month's hospital visit, after a cup of Clara's perfectly normal chamomile tea, flashed through my mind. The doctors had shrugged, unable to pinpoint why I'd been doubled over in pain, but Clara's insistence that her tea was just like mine had never sat right. Now, with this coffee's chemical tang, I knew I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I'm not the type to leap to conclusions. Years of pitching to skeptical clients in Paris's cutthroat marketing world taught me to weigh every angle, to trust evidence over emotion. But the evidence was stacking up. The stomach cramps after Clara's Christmas dinner, the unexplained rash after a breakfast here, Victor's dismissive excuses each time. Maybe you ate something off, or you're working too hard, Lisa. I'd wanted to believe him, to cling to the man who'd once made me laugh until my sides ached. But the Victor sitting across from me now, his smile as stiff as the starched napkins on Clara's table, wasn't that man. My gut screamed that this coffee was more than a bad brew, it was a trap. I set the cup down, my mind racing for a way out. "Oh, shoot," I said, fishing my phone from my purse with an exaggerated glance at the screen. "Work call. Clara, mind if I use your study?" Her lips twitched, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face, but she nodded. "Just don't touch my files," she said, her tone clipped. I stood, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest, and as I passed her place setting, I made my move. I pretended to stumble, my hand grazing the table for balance, and in one fluid motion, I swapped my coffee cup with hers. Porcelain clinked softly, masked by my flustered apology. God, I'm so clumsy. I laughed, but inside I was screaming. If I was wrong, I'd look like a fool. If I was right, this cup was my lifeline. I hurried to the study, my fingers trembling as I tapped my phone to start recording. From the doorway, I had a clear view of the dining room where Clara and Victor sat, oblivious to my sleight of hand. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I forced myself to breathe, to focus. I thought of the Christmas party, where I'd spent the night in the bathroom after Clara's special mulled wine. I thought of the breakfast where her extra seasoning left me wheezing for days. Victor's excuses had always been so smooth, his concerns so convincing, but the pattern was undeniable. They'd been chipping away at me, bit by bit, and I'd been too trusting to see it. Not anymore. As I leaned against the study's doorframe, my phone hidden in my palm, I watched Clara lift her cup, my cup, to her lips. My stomach twisted, a mix of dread and determination. This was it, the moment I'd either prove my suspicions or lose myself to doubt. I wasn't just fighting for answers. I was fighting for the woman I'd worked so hard to become, the one who'd clawed her way up in a ruthless industry, who refused to be undone by betrayal. Whatever happened next, I was ready. The sterile halls of Cochin Hospital buzzed with urgency as I sat in the waiting room, my phone clutched like a lifeline. My name is Lisa Moreau, and at 29 I'd built a career in Paris's ruthless marketing world, but nothing prepared me for this, facing the reality that my husband, Victor, and his sister Clara had tried to poison me. Hours earlier, I'd swapped my tainted coffee with Clara's at her Marais apartment, and now she lay in a hospital bed, her plan backfiring spectacularly. Dr. Eloise Martin, a stern woman with graying hair, approached me, her expression grim. "Clara's stabilized," she said, her voice measured. "But her blood work shows a compound used in pharmaceutical testing, nothing that belongs in coffee." My stomach lurched, not from fear but from vindication. I'd been right. I handed Dr. Martin my phone, the recorded confession from brunch playing through its tiny speaker. Clara's voice, weak but venomous, echoed, "Victor, what did you put in that coffee?" Followed by Victor's panicked whisper, "That wasn't supposed to be your cup." The doctor's eyes widened, shifting from concern to outrage as the recording revealed their plot, to sabotage my career by making me miss key presentations, especially the Beaumont account, a multi-million-euro deal Clara's firm desperately wanted. I watched her scribble notes, her pen moving furiously. "This is serious, Lisa," she said. "We're talking deliberate contamination." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "It's not the first time," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "I've been hospitalized 3 times in the past 6 months, stomach pains, dizziness, symptoms the doctors couldn't explain." I pulled up a document on my phone, a meticulous log I'd kept since the pattern emerged, dates, symptoms, events. The Christmas party where Clara's special mulled wine left me bedridden. The breakfast where her extra seasoning sent me to urgent care. tea incident 2 months ago when traces of an unidentified substance showed up in my blood. I started carrying a second phone, I admitted, lowering my voice. I recorded their conversations when I was around them. I played another clip, Clara's voice cold and clear. The Beaumont account is worth millions, Victor. We can't let Lisa take it. A few days of illness will do. Dr. Martin's face hardened. This is evidence of premeditated harm, she said, signaling a nurse to call security. Victor appeared at the end of the hall, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He'd mumbled something about parking the car earlier, but I knew he was avoiding me. Lisa, let me explain, he stammered, taking a step forward. I held up a hand, my voice steady. Explain what, Victor? These texts? I showed Dr. Martin the messages I'd forwarded from his phone last week, ones I'd found after discovering a strange vial in his desk. Make sure she's out before the Beaumont presentation, Clara had written. Victor's reply, got something stronger this time. His face crumpled, the charming man I'd married 3 years ago nowhere to be found. I thought of our wedding, his vows under the chateau's twinkling lights, promising to protect me. Now, those promises felt like a cruel joke. How long, Victor? I asked, my voice shaking with rage I could no longer hide. How long have you and Clara been poisoning me to keep me down? He opened his mouth, but no words came. Clara, visible through her hospital room window, lay connected to monitors, her usual confidence replaced by fear. She gambled and lost. Dr. Martin pressed the nurse's call button. Security to room 412, she said sharply. Victor raised his hands, pleading, It's a misunderstanding. But the truth was spilling out, unstoppable. I'd spent months doubting myself, blaming my body, my stress. Now, with the evidence in my hands, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't the paranoid wife. I was the woman who'd trusted her instincts, who'd fought back. As security approached, I knew this was only the beginning of justice and my own rebirth. My name is Lisa Moreau, a 29-year-old marketing executive in Paris, where dreams and betrayals often walk hand in hand. For 3 weeks, I sat in a stark courtroom in the Palais de Justice, its grand columns and polished floors a stark contrast to the ugliness unfolding within. My husband, Victor Dubois, and his sister Clara had tried to poison me, not just to derail my career but to erase me from the competition for the Beaumont account, a multi-million-euro deal that could make or break a firm in Paris's cutthroat marketing world. As Detective Sophie Laurent presented the evidence, I felt the weight of their betrayal settle into my bones, but also a quiet strength rising within me. I wasn't just fighting for justice, I was reclaiming my life. Detective Laurent, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp gaze and a knack for unraveling lies, had taken charge after the hospital confrontation. Her team searched Victor and Clara's homes and offices, uncovering damning evidence in Victor's desk. Small vials labeled with clinical codes, alongside a notebook detailing dosages and my reactions after each poisoning attempt. December 24th, mulled wine, mild nausea, missed client dinner, one entry read. April 15th, tea, dizziness, Lisa still attended meeting. Precision chilled me. They'd treated me like a lab rat, testing how much poison it took to keep me down without raising suspicion. But they'd underestimated me. Trial was a grueling marathon, each day peeling back layers of their scheme. Prosecution played my recordings from that fateful brunch in Clara's Marais apartment, where I'd swapped my tainted coffee with hers. Clara's voice, slurred with panic, echoed through the courtroom. Victor, what did you put in that coffee? His whispered reply, That wasn't supposed to be your cup, drew gasps from the gallery. Text messages, which I'd secretly forwarded from Victor's phone, were projected on a screen. Clara's curt order, Make sure she's out before Beaumont, and Victor's chilling response, Got something stronger this time. Dr. Eloise Martin's testimony sealed their fate. She explained how the compound in Clara's blood, found in my coffee, was a controlled substance used in pharmaceutical testing, potentially lethal in higher doses. If Lisa had drunk it, she said, her voice steady, the outcome could have been fatal. Facing Victor in court was harder than I'd expected. He sat at the defense table, his head bowed, a shadow of the man who'd swept me off my feet 3 years ago at a friend's wedding in a Parisian chateau. Back then, his laughter had felt like sunlight, his promises like anchors. Now, he couldn't meet my eyes, his once confident demeanor reduced to a slump of shame. Clara, always so poised, looked diminished in her defendant's chair, her designer suits replaced by plain clothes, her sharp wit silenced by the weight of evidence. I remembered a moment early in our marriage when she'd pulled me aside at a gala, her smile tight. "Don't shine too bright, Lisa," she'd said, her voice sugary but edged. "Not everyone loves a star." Now I saw it clearly. Her jealousy had festered as I outpaced her in the marketing world, where she'd once been the queen. The Beaumont account, which her firm had chased for years, had chosen me as their lead, a blow her ego couldn't withstand. Prosecution's case was airtight. A pharmaceutical rep testified that Victor had accessed the toxins through a college friend in their research lab, a betrayal of trust that mirrored his betrayal of me. The prosecutor's closing argument was searing. This wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was a calculated attempt to harm Lisa Moreau, escalating to potentially lethal intent. When the verdict came, guilty on counts of conspiracy and attempted murder, I felt no joy, only a profound relief, like exhaling a breath I'd held for months. As Victor and Clara were led away in handcuffs, their faces ashen, I thought of the life we'd shared. Family dinners, quiet evenings in our Montmartre apartment, dreams of a future now shattered. Their greed and envy had cost them everything, their careers, their freedom, their humanity. In the days after, I walked along the Seine, the city's lights reflecting on the water, and let myself feel the weight of survival. I'd spent months doubting my instincts, blaming myself for the sickness, the missed opportunities. But I'd fought back, logging every incident, recording their whispers, trusting the voice inside me that refused to be silenced. Courtroom had been my battleground, and the truth my weapon. Friends asked how I stayed strong through it all. "I focused on what I could control," I told them, and I refused to let fear win. That strength carried me forward, past the pain of betrayal, toward a future I'd build on my own terms. The Beaumont account became my triumph. Client, impressed by my resilience, signed a multi-year contract, cementing my place as one of Paris's top marketing executives. Standing in that courtroom, watching Victor and Clara face the consequences, I realized I wasn't just a survivor, I was a force. Their attempt to dim my light had only made it burn brighter. As I left the Palais de Justice, the Parisian sky stretched wide above me, and for the first time in months, I felt free. A year after the trial that exposed my husband Victor and his sister Clara's attempt to poison me, I stood on the stage of the Paris Business Leaders Conference, the grand chandelier of the Palais de Congrès casting a warm glow over the sea of faces before me. The Beaumont account, the multi-million-euro deal they tried to sabotage me for, had not only stayed with my firm but had propelled me to the top ranks of Paris's marketing elite. As I gripped the podium, preparing to deliver the keynote speech, I felt the weight of everything I'd overcome, not just their betrayal, but the doubt, fear, and sleepless nights that had once threatened to break me. "Success isn't just about talent or hard work," I began, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. "It's about integrity, about standing firm when those closest to you try to pull you down." The audience leaned in, their eyes locked on me, and for a moment I was back in Clara's Le Marais apartment, staring at that tainted coffee with its metallic tang, my instincts screaming that something was wrong. That moment, when I swapped the cups and recorded their confession, had changed everything. It wasn't just about survival. It was about choosing to fight, to trust myself when the world felt like it was crumbling. Trial had been a crucible, forging me into someone stronger. Victor and Clara, once the center of my family life, had been convicted of conspiracy and attempted murder, their carefully laid plans unraveled by my recordings, texts, and Dr. Eloise Martin's damning testimony about the poison they'd used. I'd watched them led away in handcuffs, Victor's head bowed, Clara's sharp features dulled by defeat. But there was no joy in it, only a quiet relief that the truth had finally surfaced. Now, standing on this stage, I wasn't just speaking to the crowd, I was speaking to the woman I'd been a year ago, the one who doubted her own strength. After my speech, a young woman approached, her eyes bright with determination. "How did you stay so calm when your own family betrayed you?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and curiosity. I paused, remembering the nights I'd lain awake, replaying every accident, the Christmas party's mulled wine, the breakfast with Clara's special seasoning, the tea that sent me to the hospital. "I focused on what I could control," I told her, my tone soft but firm. I trusted my instincts, gathered evidence, and refused to let fear stop me from chasing my goals. She nodded, scribbling my words in a notebook, and I felt a spark of pride, not just for myself, but for her, for every woman fighting to carve her place in a world that doesn't always play fair. That evening, as I sat in my Montmartre apartment overlooking the city's twinkling skyline, I received an email from the Beaumont client confirming a 3-year contract renewal. I smiled, not out of spite, but because I'd proven something to myself. The best revenge wasn't tearing Victor and Clara down. It was rising above them, building a life they could never touch. I thought back to that pivotal moment at Clara's brunch when my hands trembled as I swapped the coffee cups. My heart had pounded, torn between fear of being wrong and terror of being right. But that choice to trust myself had been the turning point. It wasn't just about catching them, it was about reclaiming my power. The ordeal had taught me to see the world differently. I'd once believed love and loyalty were unshakable, that Victor's vows under the chateau's lights were sacred. But betrayal had shown me that trust must be earned, not assumed, and that the people closest to you can wield the sharpest knives. Clara's jealousy, fueled by my success in an industry where she'd once reigned, had driven her to orchestrate a campaign of poison and deceit, with Victor as her reluctant accomplice. I remembered her words at a gala years ago, "Don't shine too bright, Lisa." Now I understood she'd seen my light as a threat to her own and she'd tried to snuff it out. But I'd learned other lessons too. Resilience isn't just surviving, it's choosing to grow from pain. I'd started a foundation to support young women in marketing, offering mentorship and scholarships to help them navigate the barriers I'd faced. At our first event, held in a cozy venue near the Seine, I watched a room full of eager faces share their dreams, and it hit me. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a beacon for others, proof that you can rise from betrayal stronger than before. I didn't read the tabloid articles about Victor and Clara's prison sentences, their once glamorous lives reduced to headlines. The past didn't matter. The future, the opportunities one was creating, the lives I was touching did. Walking through Paris's streets, past the boulangeries and bustling cafes, I felt the city's pulse sync with my own. I'd always loved its beauty, but now I saw its resilience too, the way it had rebuilt itself through wars and revolutions. Like Paris, I'd been tested, broken, and remade. My lessons were hard-won but clear. Trust your instincts because they're often the first to spot danger. Document everything because evidence turns suspicion into power. Control what you can, whether it's a swapped coffee cup or a career-defining pitch. And most importantly, never let fear dim your light because even when those you love try to pull you down, your strength can lift you higher. As I stood on my balcony, the Eiffel Tower glowing in the distance, I thought of the young woman from the conference, her notebook filled with my words. I hoped she'd carry them forward, just as I was carrying my own story. The Beaumont account had been a victory, but the real triumph was this. I'd turned poison into purpose, betrayal into strength. Victor and Clara had tried to write my ending, but I was the one holding the pen. And as I looked out over Paris, I knew my story was just beginning. Surviving Victor and Clara's betrayal taught me lessons I'll carry forever, etched into my heart like the cobblestone streets of Paris. First, trust your instincts. That metallic tang in the coffee at Clara's Le Marais brunch wasn't just a bad brew, it was my gut screaming danger. Listening to that inner voice when every fiber of my being wanted to trust my husband saved my life. Instincts are your compass in a world full of shadows. They guide you when logic alone isn't enough. second, document everything. I started logging every incident, dates, symptoms, suspicions after the first unexplained hospital visit. When I found cryptic texts on Victor's phone, I forwarded them to myself. When I overheard Clara's scheming, I recorded it on a secret phone. Those notes, recordings, and messages turned my fears into undeniable truth, transforming suspicion into evidence that held up in court. In a storm of doubt, records are your anchor. Third, control what you can. Swapping that coffee cup, building my case, staying calm in the chaos, these were choices I made when everything else felt like it was slipping away. Focusing on my actions gave me power, a way to fight back against their poison. You can't control others' betrayal, but you can control your response, and that makes all the difference. Finally, shine despite fear. Victor and Clara's betrayal cut deep, but letting it dim my light would have handed them the victory. Instead, I poured my pain into my work, my foundation, my future. Standing on that stage at the Paris Business Leaders Conference, I realized that success isn't just surviving, it's thriving unapologetically no matter who tries to pull you down. If my story resonates with you, please like, share, and support this channel. It means the world to keep these stories alive.